Let's move now to the digital sector in Nigeria. As Visa, American Pay card establishment, has decided to have a data center in Nigeria. So when you have your ATM cards or your debit card, sometimes when you check, you see the name clearly written that that card was produced, and the infrastructure supporting that card is also coming from a particular tech fintech company that supports payment. So now they want to have a data center established in Nigeria, so also facilitate payment solution, digital payment solution in Nigeria. It's a good one. We're talking about financial inclusion in Nigeria for a very long time. With all the many charges now, if you have to do cash transactions, if you have to withdraw cash from the ATM, it is wise now to begin to develop more digital payment solutions so that transactions can go easily, conveniently, and also affordably. But there is a challenge to it, and that's infrastructure. So the infrastructure for this is what Visa is saying that they would provide, starting with a data center. Doc.
Well, I think we cannot overstate that data is very key and important to national planning and development. And from where we began this morning, looking at the Singapore story, one of the key driver of the Singapore economy is accurate data, because the entire planning process is guided by data. And if you look at the way it was structured, it was to make Singapore the financial hub globally. Even Fintech has not grown to this extent. And what the government needed to do was to provide those basic infrastructure that, of course, people are free and they are comfortable moving their money, so that Singapore become the financial capital of the world. And that was what they were working toward. And I think this is one of the issues that, of course, we continue to recall. Because when you look at our environment, we can't even talk about adequate planning when we don't have enough infrastructure on the ground to capture who is doing what and where do they live. And this is quite very, very important. And if we must have a sane environment where things work, where, of course, we can even be able to see tomorrow from today, then data become something that we can rely on. Yes, we are good to have Visa, an American company, build a data company in Nigeria. But I think that I really wish that is Nigeria will have this data and able to provide Visa access or partial access to our data, rather than allow them to create a data center that, of course, they're going to use for their business alone. And how we are able to get access to this private data is another ball game. And to what extent are we allowed to even use this data for our own domestic planning? It's a different kettle of fish. So I think that we must be proactive enough. Yes, people want to help us. At least we must also put some things, basic things on the ground that, of course, when people are coming to our environment, they can key into those infrastructure that we have laid. Now, again, talking about inclusion that you just mentioned, we are still struggling, even with the coverage of 4G, that is still less than 60% as we speak, let alone entering the regime and the era of 5G. Only Abuja and Lagos is even having a skeletal touch of 5G. So these are basic challenges that the government will need to face, so that, yes, you're going to do some of all this payment structure. How do we capture everybody in the looks at the creating of Nigeria, so that we have accuracy in terms of prediction and forecast of what the economy can look like in a near future?
There are going to be advantages of having a data center in Nigeria. For one, it will help data utilization, and that also translates to or results to having speed in transactions. You have a data warehouse locally. But like you raised the question, how would the rest or the more stakeholders have access to this data? There was a time we were talking about assets, and you talked about asset sharing. So I think asset sharing should come into play here. So if Visa rather, is going to site a data center in Nigeria, perhaps there should be an arrangement that makes possible for asset sharing, so that small corporations or small companies that don't have the strength as much as Visa, who are also providing maybe payment solutions or even other telecom services, can have access to it, and it becomes easy rather than having data warehoused outside of Nigeria, and when transactions needed to be carried out, you're trying to link up, and that takes a bit of time and it's a lot of process. But because this is one business, then you're going to consider what will be most beneficial for them and what will give them a great edge over other businesses. But if we put the necessary infrastructure on the ground, which you have talked about, then it becomes easy to have such negotiations to say, we're providing this, we're providing that. So if we do this, yes, you will have your own comparative advantage, you have your own edge over other businesses. But can you also open up so other people can benefit from this, and it's now beneficial to Nigeria than you just having only the edge, building some form of monopoly, and then it's not really maybe cost effective to the consumer, so it becomes premium whoever wants to have access to your service. Because if you check the space that they occupy in providing payment services, it's like they're at the top. If you want certain kinds of service, particularly when it has to do with offshore transactions, offshore e-transactions, you want to then look at what they're offering. Meanwhile, there are other players who do not have their reach, so it becomes a bit difficult to do that. So there's a lot that Nigeria needs to do in terms of facilitating local data centers.
Yes. So, first of all, there's this saying in government that the vice president most of the time is in charge of the National Economic Council. And there are all kinds of economic activities and policy issues that goes on there. Of course, it's not without the know of the president. But if you remember vividly, maybe it was in February, where there was a local card manufacturing, chip manufacturing company that was talking about how it has stayed and spent 25 years in the system. It manufactures ATM cards for Nigerian banks. It manufactures SIM cards for some of the telecommunication organizations in Nigeria, and it also, provides some form of tech solution service providers to other tech solution companies across the country. And the vice president himself talked and spoke extensively about the anniversary of this organization. They are located somewhere in Lagos, and how they have contributed immensely to economic activities in the country, and the fact that they are a local company and they are developing muscle. We spoke about that organization here on this table in the front burners, and we burnt it. Now, I am not surprised this American company, is coming. I am assuming they came and they are making their presence popular, and they are putting themselves out there in public for again, because they felt and they saw the role that the vice president played in talking about that company, because it's a local organization, it's a local company, and it's doing extremely well. That is good. And if they are coming through this route, for the fact that they are going to have a data infrastructure in Nigeria, they are going to build that infrastructure, that plant in Nigeria here, is something that is quite consoling for me, because it's going to provide jobs for the local technology market in the country. And the fact that the doctor was talking about how the local organizations are going to share, to be part of sharing that data, the infrastructure. Because if you look, they were speaking most times about fintechs. And the American company was making references to some of the 10 highest or most functional fintechs in Africa, and 8 of them are in Nigeria alone, with the new inclusion of the specific fintech company it mentioned in the exam. And I like the fact that Nigeria is the hub of fintech banks and technology in Africa, and that is really going to bring investment, because when we start talking about a payment system in Africa, Nigeria is bailing the cat, and that is contributing to how business is run in Africa and in Nigeria. So I'm not surprised about this American company coming into place. And because it's attached to fintech and it's going to be playing some form of role when it comes to the banking sector, the CBN and other regulatory bodies in the financial space is going to have an input and some form of regulatory oversight in the establishment of this visa and the activities is running in Africa. That is going to be where local data sharing with this specific organization is really going to come in. And the role that the CBN and other financial regulatory organizations are going to play is to make sure that they link the services of this data organization with local industries, with local participants who do not have the financial chest to establish their own data plant and data infrastructure, so that even if the American company is going to be playing a very big role, at least the local industries and the local data companies too will have to attach themselves and grow as the time continues.
Yeah, but another issue that also must also be factored in, and of course is bringing in about $1 billion to complete this goal, which is of course some very massive investment.
Yes.
Is also to say, have we been able to also build up our capacity in such a way that we are not going to have expatriate run this data. We have local competencies in that regard. Because you remember on Friday when we're talking about China, there was a little video played of Tim Cook who was saying that people were not going to China because labor were cheap. People were going to China because of the depth of skills, especially in the area of tool makings, especially for a technological world, and that you have an army of people that has been empowered such a way that industries find it easier, because there's no other climate where you can find such level of expertise except in China. So companies are moving there because there's that attractiveness. It's also to see how we're going to prepare our system, especially institutions, our school system, such a way that we can build up that army of humans who are able to actually support this data collection, data analysis, and the rest of this work that make it actually profitable for our environment. It's another area we must also look at, because when people are thinking of coming to invest in your environment, they're also thinking about how to make work simple, and you're not going to pay so much of expatriates, and you're able to use a local to do your job. That investment also must be done by Nigeria. I don't think that a visa would need to do that investment, so that these jobs are not shipped elsewhere, but it can be handled by local, and that help reduce poverty in the environment and reduce the unemployment gap as we have it currently.
I like the collaboration that already exists between Visa and some fintech companies in Nigeria. So the Vice President was talking about how there are 10 fintech companies in Africa, and 8 of them are in Nigeria. It's a good one. It gives Nigeria that leadership role, being able to take advantage of having more of the players and becoming like the ones leading the market or taking the huge size of the market. But again, we need the necessary infrastructure that will enable this. Now, but there's also a bit of cause of worry there. If they're investing and collaborating with fintechs already, and there was also amount of money that was put into Switch, so that you were not in a way encouraging monopoly. Now, it's good to have big players, but how big a player is also important. You can have players that are too big. It's now very difficult for the small players to compete with. So in terms of fairness in competition, you don't have that because of the financial strength that they have, the synergy that they have, and then the wide reach and access that they also have. So it's also time that I think the government begins to support other payment platforms in Nigeria that may not be as big as this, to provide for a fair playing ground, a fair competition where no one is able to completely muscle the other one out, or it's not a situation where it's the crumbs that you now leave for the other players to handle, particularly when we're talking about offshore transactions. Some people, we're even regarding the MasterCard. So MasterCard option was available to almost anybody that wanted to use MasterCard. But we came to a point where it is not even being restricted. You want to have MasterCard and banks are telling you, no, only Visa, I beg your pardon, only the Verve card is available. You can't have the MasterCard option. And we look at the supporters or those who support the MasterCard operations. You have people like this, or you have companies like this. So we should also begin to look at strengthening the fintech companies. There's a lot to have fintech running. Now, if we have very strong local fintech companies running, that means that what they can do, their reach and connectivity would even be more, and we'll have a better financial sector here in Nigeria, because it is not only, it won't be only the conventional financial institutions that are able to facilitate offshore transactions. It will also be that the fintechs have grown, and it's not just locally that they are able to operate, but they have backbone. They are able to have the amount of money for this kind of investment. The last time we had Shane Akindele here, when we were talking about servers, and he talked about how much of money is required for you to even have one server. But this is because they have the financial muscle. That's why Visa is looking at having a data center in Nigeria where they will have systems, they'll have networks, and they'll have servers that cost thousands, billions of millions of dollars to have. We should also have other companies, or even the country as a whole, having that, not just for fintech operations, but even for the telecom operations. We're talking about artificial intelligence in this time, and we don't even have much of this infrastructure in the country. So it's a big one. Data is now the new gold that countries are mining. So if we have that, given that we're already controlling a huge size of the financial of the fintech market,
yes,
it will help the fintech companies to be able to take advantage of the African markets. Okay,
so one of the parts I want to point out is that according to Business Day, the Nigerian telecommunications industry is worth over $10 billion. And if you vividly take a step backward for a period of time, you remember very well that it was the entry of telecommunication into Nigeria, brought out this boom to internet, data, and the presence of fintechs in the country and also in the continent. And because of that, just because of that alone, look at where we are. The other day we were talking about African Union giving Nigeria the first position as the one championing fintechs and mode of payment through technology in Africa, and how efficient our system is in Nigeria. So one thing that we need to also put in place is this. We need to have a new technology system for payment methods. Payment methods that will take care of something as small as 200 naira, that will take care of something as small as 150 naira, 100 naira. Because if you go to some of these your bank apps, it looks as if to send 100 naira, 200 naira out to another bank account seems somehow difficult.
Now, but why would you even want to send 100 naira?
No, because there are things you buy in the market that are just 200 naira. That are just 100 naira.
I even doubt
now, sometimes you want to go and polish your shoe. Sometimes you want to just sit down. Sometimes you just want to sit down and and the person polish your shoe. No, there is a reason why I'm going there. Doc is smiling. You just sat down. Someone needs to polish your shoe, and the shoemaker is polishing your shoe, and he's done. And you don't have cash. And even if you have cash, you have denominations of 1,000 naira and 500 naira, and the cost is just 200 naira. So we have to make a payment system whereby the cobbler on the road, those guys who just sell sweets, that is just 100 naira.
Yes, you can make transfer, even of 15 naira, you can make that transfer.
Transfer of 15 naira, and you'll be billed 10 naira.
So it's cost.
No, it's too much. Billing me 10 naira for carrying out the transaction for 15 naira, 100 naira is too much.
See, I think the thing we must also put into account is the fact, look at what is coming on this investment.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yes, it is.
And of course, these are not Father Christmas. And they're supposed to put their money on the ground, and they are able to recoup it back. And that's actually one of the issues that you talked about MasterCard just now. A lot of banks weren't taking it because it was becoming too expensive. Because yes, we talk data is what economy is right now, but think about the investment in that sector and how people are able to put money on the ground. See, part of the ease of doing business is the fact that when you put money in a business environment, that profit and prosperity is guaranteed. It's part of the ease of doing business. So nobody don't want to put money in an economy that by the time you finish, you are not able actually to recoup your investment. And then, of course, the stakeholders who put money in that environment are also crying. So it's also looking at it, are we well enough to be able to manage the cost that is associated with some of all these things, because it does not come free. It's not a social service, it's a business service that they are offering to you, and they're also hoping that in a certain number of years, they are able to recoup whatever investment that is in place. So that must also be factored into the conversation. Yeah, why it's easy for us to have consumers have the best of pricing, but don't forget that it's somebody's investment, and that investment needs to be recouped.
Okay, so I want to tell Blessing something.
All right.
See, I begin to foresee a moment whereby the government will, through the strategy of technology, completely remove toutism, agberoism from the road, and remove them completely from that position whereby the money we pay to them, the money they collect from the commercial vehicle drivers, goes straight to the local government. The government today has carry card, and through that means you cannot obstruct or stop the BRT vehicles from operating. Through this platform and through this establishment, we can develop a payment system, even from the red and black, yellow vehicles that ply the streets of Lagos, to have a card for you to just swipe, so that when you swipe, about 1 naira, or then you carve it in a way with jurisdiction to local government areas. Then when you swipe, even if it is 5 naira or 15 naira or 10 naira, goes straight to the local government account. Even if it's 1 naira or 2 naira, goes straight to the tax account of the state government, or 1 naira or 2 naira goes straight to the tax account of the federal government. Then the rest of the money goes into the account of the vehicle operator. With that method, we can completely remove the operation of agberoism from the street and from taking the money that belongs to the local government and arrogating that right to themselves. We can do that.
But my question is, do they want to take away agberoism?
That is a question that that requires.
Doc,
so, Blessing, you're asking a rhetorical question.
I don't have.
Or you already have the answer to that question.
No, I don't have the answer. I just asked the question. Do they want it? Doc, there was something you talked about the other day, where there's a system in place where those who can actually create anarchy or disturb the public peace are given a way to fend for themselves, so that something comes to them. You know, some areas are intentionally left ungoverned. Some spaces are intentionally left ungoverned, so that the the non-state actors can have their way and just turn their eyes away from what's happening on the other side, and then everybody can be at peace. So to the question of, does the government have the intention, the willpower to take away tout, agberoism, those who collect illegal taxes, so that this digital system Piri is proposing, we can have them. And even for the motorists, you see the kind of vehicles that some of them have. I don't know where they will swipe the card, where they will install the facility, because some of the vehicles are just mere skeletons moving on the road.
Yeah, it's a social miasma, as they call it, disorder in the highest form you find in society, because in short, running on my head right now is looking at the fragility of the Nigerian state. And if you look at the indicators measured in terms of fragility, you find that it is massive. Because there are a whole lot of things that governments are not able to handle at the moment. And so non-state actors seems bigger and more powerful than the government. And there's a whole lot of things that is feeding it. Is because planning at our level has not been able to get to how we can structure the society in such a way that people have life that is meaningful. And I think that's one of the things that Sook News Television is all about, to see how to create prosperity in the environment, that people's life become meaningful, that they are not ready to waste it for things that are not substantial. So, but you see, that reform had to happen at some point. What's the role of even the very wealthiest in our society? What's the role of the church? What's the role of the mosque in ensuring that we don't have these touts in place? I was talking to my friend last night, and one of the issues we were talking about was even the transfer of mission school back to the owners. And by the time the school were handed over, they lost some school lost up to 95% of enrollment, some 60%, some 80%, because the people could not afford the new fee. Because while government was running those schools, they were paying less and less to nothing. And now it's in the hands of religious institutions. They are paying so much that not so many people can have access to those basic facilities. These are problems, and that is creating this social disorder. And I think that until we take a comprehensive approach, that even as God blesses you, that you think about taking one child off the street, either empowering that child to be able to acquire a skill that can put food on his table, and then he doesn't expose himself or herself to those dangers, we will still be around this circle. But one of the things that I also believe is the fact that government has taken too much in the sand, that well, all you need to do is rely on these people because of the way democracy is run today. And that's even really also encouraging it, because people are making money. I remember growing up, I decided to say, okay, well, there are some people who didn't have access to education. And I was trying my own local community to explain to them why education was quite important. Now, one of the things they point you to is the fact that, look, that guy, he didn't go to school, but he has more money than you, who is a graduate. And so the motivation for people really to join a trade is how well such a trade can make them. Now, if education is not able to put food on the table of a man, people are not attracted to it. How are we going to design our education system in such a way that we can actually make people who passes through the system become the role model for the entire society is something that you want to think about. Because when you look at some of the people who are the head of some of these unregistered tax collectors today, and look at the number of wealth that they garner, and how they are able to celebrate first 1 billion, 200 billion, I think Blessing understand that now. You know, see, these people are so powerful that just by staying on the road, and then someone say, oh, I have hit my 1 billion.
And he went outside the country to celebrate the 1 billion.
Yeah. Not because it was productive. So these are the challenge that the environment faces. So it becomes like a motivation for other people to get into that trade, because they're expecting that someday they're going to have a better life doing such a thing. So this is where the onus is on all of us as concerned citizens to continue to see how we educate and take people out of criminality, take them out of poverty, and then they can have a life that is completely meaningful.
All right, so what got us here was the new data center that Visa intends to establish in Lagos, and how critical that data center would be for financial transactions in Nigeria, not just financial transactions, but also telecom, because data is crucial. But the thing is, so if a business is putting down money to have that kind of infrastructure, it means that they are also looking at ways to recoup the money. But government can do its best to ensure that what it costs to have certain infrastructures that will support the digital economy in Nigeria is not so expensive, is not so much that only foreign players or only very big players can do. So the collaboration that have existed and still might still extend to other fintech between Visa and some fintech companies in Nigeria. I think other payment platforms and other tech companies can emulate that. So you have an advantage in one area. You do not have the advantage in the other area. So instead of looking for how to spread, you can partner with another company that provides service in a particular area, and together you form a chain so that the value chain just goes like that, and you're able to provide services to the people. Basically, what we're saying here is that for Nigeria, it is critical that we have our own data center, because that's where a lot of countries are going into. They're making it almost compulsory for companies to localize data centers, one for national security and another two for efficiency and reliability of transactions of the services that they render. So it's down for government to encourage partnerships, public-private partnerships, to create an enabling environment for investors who can handle this, who can support companies to come into some collaboration to have this happen. There's a lot that Nigeria can make from improving its digital economy. We talk about the $1 trillion economy. This can be achieved when setting policies, when setting infrastructure, making it less capital intensive for the investors, for those who are key players in the industry to handle. Yes, kudos to the Super Eagles. There are more matches to play. I do hope that it becomes winning streak for Super Eagles. And at the end of the day, we do not have to bring calculators and begin to calculate, so how many points did Zimbabwe or Rwanda have? How many points do we need to score? I hope it's win, win, win all the way. So victory is our prayer for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. If you like Nigeria, if you love the Super Eagles of Nigeria, you can also join us in that prayer. They say the god of football is Nigerian. Well, I know that everyone claims that the god of football is of their nationality. So I'm Blessing Eichie. Thank you so much for watching the show today. If you did not have the chance to comment on conversations talked about today, we'll give you another. At Sook News, that's the handle on all social media platforms, and on YouTube, Sook News TV. You can just hashtag the front burners and make a comment regarding the conversations talked about today. Do you think that for our political leaders, we need to emulate the leadership style of the first Prime Minister of Singapore, Kuan Yew? If that's what you think, or you think otherwise, you can also talk about that. And for the digital economy, what do we need to harness all the benefits? These are the conversations that were discussed today. You can just share your opinion. Don't forget food safety. Wash your hands, ensure that whatever food you're consuming is wholesome. And for those who make money by selling fake drugs, see, it is not only when you go to maybe a herbalist, or I don't know, use a herbalist, when you go to a witch doctor to say you want to do money rituals. That's not the only time you are a ritualist. But if your business claims the lives of people, now the verdict from the front burners table is that you also are a ritualist. So change, because you don't want to have the blood of people on your hands. Doc?
Yeah, they say failure is not final. It doesn't matter what happened in the market last week. The sentiment may be bearish, but I can tell you it can begin very well today. Connect with Sook News, and then, of course, you know how to climb up the wet ladder. We will be here back again tomorrow to set fire on the issues that make the world a better place.
Oyinpreye Krumale.
Yes, and from me, good morning to you. See you tomorrow.